Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digitally Uploaded podcast. I'm Matt Sainsbury. I'm the editor-in-chief of digitallydownloaded.net, and with me this week we have Trent. Hello, Trent. How you doing?
Hello. Somewhat good. I've got half an orange juice left. A bit sick today.
Oh, okay. Keep up the vitamin C. We got Harvard. Hello, Harvard.
Good morning, everyone.
And we have Jay from JRPG, the YouTube channel. He's been on the podcast a couple of times before, and we've got him this week because we've got a load of JRPG stuff to talk about. Hello, Jay. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Not too bad. It's a good week. We've got Shining Resonance and Octopath, and all the good JRPGs of the month have come out at once, and we'll talk about those a bit later on through the podcast. Before we get to our customary Hatsune Miku music to kick things off, a couple of little bits of news that might be of interest to people. Firstly, Yakuza 2 Kiwami demo is now live on the PlayStation 4 and stuff. If you haven't had that out and you missed the news, go and grab it because that's an exciting release from Sega coming up. And I know everybody on the podcast is looking forward to that one, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it should be good. That's I haven't played Yakuza 2, but from what I've heard, the that game is a lot of people's favorite from the entire series. So if it can top Yakuza 0, I will be very happy indeed. And then the other bit of news is if you're in Australia, don't forget to pick up your tickets to Smash, which happens next weekend. Is that right, Harvard?
Definitely. Come and see Yoko Taro. He may or may not be wearing his moon face.
Yes, Yoko Taro is kind of the headline guest. So I guess the video game fans at Smash. Smash is for international listeners. Smash is probably the biggest and the best Australian convention that's focused entirely on Japan and Japanese entertainment and anime and stuff. And it's always a really good show. I've been along for quite a few years now and love it. And Harvard loved it so much he actually ended up working on the team that produces it. So yeah, it's a good event, and definitely make sure you head along to it next weekend in the heart of Sydney, the convention centre. That's right, isn't it?
Yep, ICC Convention Centre. The online ticket sales have closed, but you can buy at the door when you head there.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Save your pennies and make sure you come along at the weekend. All right, so we'll go listen to some Hatsune Miku music, and I haven't chosen which track yet, but we'll add that in editing, obviously. We'll come back and we'll start talking about anime games.
You can call me Miku, blue hair, blue tie, hiding in your Wi-Fi, open secrets, anyone can find me. No music coming from my mind. I'm thinking Miku, Miku, I'm thinking Miku, I'm thinking Miku, I want to I
Welcome back, everybody. I hope that Miku music puts you in a good mood because, yeah, it's a great day. The first thing that we'll talk about this week is actually Anime Expo, or AX, which is a big event that's held over in America. And for some reason, or I guess for a pretty good reason, a lot of Japanese developers, or publishers anyway, use that event as an opportunity to make some big announcements. Even though E3 just came and went, a lot of the smaller niche publishers of Japanese games realize that that show is hard to get the media's attention. So rather than try and compete with the big guys at E3, they instead focus their energies on their audience and making sure that they make a big splash at Anime Expo. So this year, especially Spike-Chunsoft and Nippon Ichi were there in force and made some really cool announcements, some really exciting stuff coming out from those two publishers. The first one is, well, we'll talk about Nippon Ichi first, I think. And the big game that they announced for me was the Caligula Effect, which was an amazing Vita game that is very memorable for me and probably one of my favorite JRPGs ever. And it was published by Atlas, but Atlas obviously passed on the PS4 version, which is the one that Nippon Ichi has picked up. And on top of the PS4 version, they've actually also decided to make a Switch version, which didn't happen in Japan, so that's how much, I guess, Nippon Ichi's really thrown in with this game. They're pretty big things from it. And yeah, it's very exciting. I'm very, very excited. What about you, Jay? I know you played the original Caligula Effect. Are you going to double dip? Are you going to play it again?
Yeah, I'll definitely do it, especially just to even just to show support, but I'll probably play it again, especially on the Switch.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. And the thing, it worked as a on the Vita. The Vita itself was probably a little bit weak in terms of hardware for the ambition that the developers had for the game. It has some issues and all that nonsense that people tend to fixate on, but it meant that the experience wasn't quite as good as it could be. So hopefully the Switch version will fix that, and I know that the developers have actually gone back to add additional characters, refine the gameplay, and hopefully fix some of the issues that people had, because for me, what that game was all about was the narrative. It was a really, really good narrative-driven JRPG. So if people can focus on that rather than the gameplay, I think it'll do better this time around, because it was a bit of a bomb, unfortunately, when it was released on the Vita, because nobody has Vita in the West.
Yeah, nobody has one over here, and there was no advertising or marketing for it whatsoever.
Yeah, it kind of landed and died, unfortunately. Like I said,
think it came out at the same time as a bunch of other stuff too. It's I don't know, if you're going to release a niche game with no marketing, at least don't do it in proximity to like 4 other big notable releases.
Yeah, I swear it was like a week off, or several weeks after Persona 5, and everyone's still playing that. And then a week later, Tokyo Xanadu EX came out on the Vita as well. And it's just, you get Persona-style game overload.
Yeah, that's the thing, because Caligula Effect is very heavily influenced by Persona in terms of, I guess, the way it does its story and stuff. And like Harvard said, in addition to Persona 5 being released just before Caligula Effect and Xanadu being released just after, there was also Akiba's Beat, which was another niche game that used the Persona storytelling approach. So there were all these games that followed a very similar theme, and that was just stupid timing on behalf of everybody, frankly. They should.
Yeah, I remember having to overload at the time. Like, I had my release list out. I was like, how am I going to play like 17 games in the next 4 weeks?
Yeah, exactly. But if you're looking at getting a taste of Caligula Effect, there is the anime, which is actually on Crunchyroll at the moment, and it's not actually a retelling of an exact retelling of the video game story, so you can watch it and have a pretty spoiler-free, I guess, experience when you come to play the game as well, and it'll give you a sense of the kind of thing that they're aiming at. It's a really good anime, actually. What about you two, Trent and Harvard? Now that Caligula Effects is coming out on a platform that you kind of use, the Switch, especially you, Trent, would you be interested in having a look at this time around? Is my endless hype for this game enough to convince you to put it on your radar?
Most likely, especially it's on the Switch now. I'll probably pick up a lot of games which launched on the Vita, which I missed out on. So that's a big benefit there. But the way you were describing it plays similar to Persona, that's probably, in terms of the storytelling, that would, probably on my radar anyway, or it should be. So it's sort of a type of game which I'll probably pick up now, but it's getting a more mainstream release on a platform which I'm going to actually use.
Yep, absolutely. What else is Nipponichi has also announced RPG Maker for consoles. RPG Maker MV, which is obviously already available on PC, but you'll be able to grab the thing on Switch, PS4, and Xbox One. And for people that don't want to buy the game, the bonus is that there will also be a free app that you can download for those consoles that lets you play other people's created games. So effectively, you'll have an unlimited supply of 16-bit style RPGs as of next year, which is really neat. And I'm looking forward to that. I enjoyed playing around with RPG Maker on the 3DS, even though I already have all the RPG Makers on PC. I don't know, there's something about messing around with the stuff on a console which is just enjoyable, and you can do it on the train and all that kind of stuff, which is cool. So that's those are probably the major ones for Nipponichi. Anything else that they announced that you've got on your radar, Jay?
I don't think so. I think that was about it that I can remember. I did miss a couple of things, but there were so many announcements yesterday.
There were. I mean, I know they also put new trailers out and did character announcements for stuff like Disgaea 1 complete.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm like, I never finish a Disgaea game, but I play them a lot, so I'm looking forward to it.
I don't think anybody can finish a Disgaea game. I don't think it's possible. I think, there's just not enough hours in a person's life to finish a Disgaea game properly.
I'm never going to reach that level cap.
9,900, or was it 99,000? No, 9,999. That ridiculous level cap. Harvard, have you ever played a Disgaea game?
No, I played the demo of 5 on the Switch, but I've heard the reputation that it takes like lifetimes to finish, and I just not really jumped into it.
Would you consider playing the new one, like the very original Disgaea as it is remastered in HD for Switch? Would that be something that'll entice you?
You know what's interesting to me is that penguin character they always have, and it just pops up everywhere in popular culture. I just want to know what's the deal with that penguin. That's all I want to play Disgaea for. Yeah, it's everywhere.
Prinnies. They're basically like little evil demon things, but they're also useless, effectively. They're like the slime of Dragon Quest, is probably the best way to put it. They're
also, do you fight them?
No, they're on your side because you fight evil in this.
Okay, that's okay. I would feel sad if you fight them.
Yes,
like fighting evils would just be wrong.
Well, the other side has Prinnies too, so there's often a Prinnie versus Prinnie thing. But they're basically very disposable, useless, weak enemies. And I mean, part of the joke is you can pick them up and throw them, and they explode, and that kills them. Generally takes something out with them, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, they're a comic relief character more than anything else. But they're definitely the mascot. They've become the mascot of Nipponichi because they've been so popular, and Disgaea has been, I guess, the major franchise for Nipponichi for a long time now. Okay, so moving over to Spike Chunsoft. I think I'll let you talk about this one a bit more, Jay, because you're probably a little bit more across it than I am, or at least you remember the name of these titles, because I can't. They've got a couple of visuals that they announced, which are pretty exciting, actually.
Yeah, AI The Somnium Files from the director of Zero Escape and the character designer of Fire Emblem Awakening. So that looks pretty good. That's coming to PS4 and Switch and Steam. It should be good. I mean, the same guy who did 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, and Punchline,
but with a good artist this time.
Yeah, but with a good artist. So it should be really good. There was the other one that I think you are more abreast of than I am with the name, that goes on for 8 million years.
There's no way. I haven't got it in front of me. There's no way I'll remember it. It's a ridiculously long name. But I mean, if anybody wants to go and quickly pull it up and tell me, that would be great. But
a girl who chants love at the bounds of this world.
What was that, Trent?
Is it Yuno?
Yeah, Yuno. What's the full?
Yes. So a girl who chants love at the bound of this world.
There you go. A girl who chants love at the bound of this world. Look, it doesn't make any sense. It's a terrible title, but this is apparently a really good visual novel, and it's actually 22 years old this year. It was originally released way back in 1996, and is generally credited for being one of the formative visual novels.
Quick correction, Matt. It's apparently a remake of the original 1998 PC and Sega Saturn version.
Yes, so it was remade in 1998. The original version of it was 1996.
And now we're getting another remake.
And now we're actually getting a release in English for the first time because visual novels took a while to take off in the West. And for the longest time, Japanese publishers did not think that there was an appetite for them in the West. And then I think games like Steins Gate and Hakuoki kind of proved that there is a market for it. And now, of course, we get a flood of them, and we get like 20 of them released on Steam every week, and the Switch is just inundated with really terrible ones from D3 publisher and stuff. All of that started because of those games, but a lot of the real old classics like blah, 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 they have stayed untranslated. So Spike Chunsoft has obviously decided to grab this one, which is really neat. I'm really looking forward to that. And I don't know, Harvard, you've played a fair few visual novels. Is this one that you would play?
I'm not too well versed with but I do know that there's a reputation for old school visual novels to be very problematic. Like the way they're designed, they shove in all these spreadsheet mechanics to try and get you to the good ending. And it's always kind of turned me off from the old school kind of games because I don't really want to think too much about whether my choices are going to increase my relationship values or whatever. But I might pick it up.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we don't really, because there have been so few of those really old school visual novels that have been released, we in the West haven't really had a chance to get a sense for what these games were about, and how things got started with the genre. It's kind of like it's kind of like if there were no JRPGs to have been released in the West on the NES and Super NES, going back to Final Fantasy 1 now, how would we kind of interpret it? So I'm really looking forward to it from a historical point of view. If nothing else, it might play terribly. I don't know. I don't think I really care as long as it's interesting and it tells me something about how the visual novel genre got started. I'll certainly be keen on it.
And I knew that, speaking of visual novels, that Spike Chunsoft announced more stuff because they also announced 428 Shibuya Scramble.
I saw that. What the hell is that?
So it's like a visual novel mixed with like AMV. It's like a visual novel mixed with live action.
Or like FMV.
Yeah.
But
it's also a visual novel gameplay. So yeah, I don't know either. I watched a little bit of it, but apparently it's obviously been in Japan before. It'll be the first time releasing in the West, and yeah, it's like a weird FMV/visual novel game.
It looks so strange. There's like this giant cat mascot that fights people.
The story involves an ex-gang leader, a mascot, kidnapping, and bioterrorism.
You see, that could either be like really serious or really funny.
Yeah.
You just don't know what it's going to be.
It's got a cat mascot. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. So Spike, I knew that Spike Chunsoft announced a bunch of stuff. They got some like other Steins Gate related things. Steins Gate Elite now has a 29 release date, and all PS4 copies will come with one of the other games.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. I think that was a pushback, wasn't it? It was originally planned to be released this year. But
probably good on their part though, because the later half of this year is too stacked to slide in a visual novel, I think.
Yes, that's probably true as well. And Spike Chunsoft seems to be relying very heavily on its visual novels at the moment. So yeah, pushing the headline one back a bit probably was for the best. But yes, it's good. It's exciting. There's lots of niche stuff coming, which is great. All right, so we'll go to some music, I think, from Caligula Effect right now, because it has an amazing soundtrack. That's one of the reasons I love the game so much. And we will come back and we will talk about Project Octopath.
「
And welcome back, everybody. I must apologize if you're hearing a little bit of static or feedback from my mic. I seem to be having some tech problems, and hopefully it doesn't keep happening. But if it does, hopefully I still make sense while I'm talking. Anyway, for the second section of the podcast, we're going to talk about one of the two big JRPGs that gets released next week, and that is Octopath Traveler. There we go. I got the name right for a change. I keep calling it Project Octopath because that's what Nintendo let us think it was called for the longest time. So it's been a hard change. It's been a very, very difficult change to think of it as Octopath Traveler. But that's what it's called. And yes, we can't talk about it in too specific terms because we're under review embargo and nonsense. But we can talk about it in general terms, and we can obviously talk about the demo and what we think of it. And I think the best place to start would be to talk about how absolutely nostalgic it is. It's obviously a love letter to the Super NES JRPGs of old, and I think it's pretty successful at capturing that vibe, not just in terms of the visuals, but also the way it plays and the way it tells its story. I think is very
the feel and everything about it. And I mean, the way it looks is amazing. Like they called it 2D HD, I think they called the engine, and it looks like it just makes you want them to go back and remake every old style RPG they've ever released in that engine. Like remaking Final Fantasy 3 or 4 and 5 and 6 in that engine would just be incredible because it looks amazing.
Yeah, it's a good way of doing that retro style where it definitely retro and it's meant to be nostalgic for people that played those old games, but at the same time it looks modern, so it doesn't look like it's a cheap indie game cashing in on the retro vibe. It looks like a game that belongs in 2018, but yeah, it's one that's and if you are relatively new to video games and don't have that nostalgia for old games, you'll still be able to appreciate the visual style of this one because it's highly aesthetic and very attractive, and it suits. It really suits because the story is pretty dark.
Yeah,
like, all the stories are pretty dark. It's not.
It looks like what sold the stories was with the first demo when you played the dancer's story and you knew, oh wow, this game's gonna be crazy. It was a very dark story compared to, I think, what was the other character in the first demo? Because there was only two, wasn't there?
The night guy, yeah. I forgot his name though.
Yeah, no one remembers the night guy. Because the dancing story was the Primrose's story was pretty brutal. But now that obviously we're playing with all the characters, a lot of the stories are pretty dark in tone, and I think a lot of people probably, came to the game in the initial stages thinking it was going to be this, light-hearted JRPG, and didn't realize that it was going to hit you pretty hard. So I think that's good. And it's got an interesting structure too, because you actually get to, each character has their own story at the start, and you get to play through each individual story, which gives you a chance to really connect with the character rather than having them all thrown together as a party in one go. I think taking the time to do proper introductions for each character is a pretty impressive move. I think, well, it worked for Dragon Age. What was the first Dragon Age? Dragon Age Origins way back when, and I think a similar thing happens here, and it's good. I've enjoyed it.
A lot of people are a little bit confused about that because we can only play the first chapter of each character's story at the moment in demos, and people were getting disappointed or something because other characters would show up in these chapters, but there wasn't any real interaction between them. And so it should, definitely be stressed that the stories intertwine later. The chapter ones that are available for demo right now are they're like the character's intro. They're like set intros for each character to learn about the character and their story and the way that they fit in the world. And later on, stories intertwine and things come together. So, there's a reason they put a 3-hour limit on the demo. It's so that you would generally just play one or two of these stories, but of course people just make a million accounts and play through all of them and assume there's no interaction between characters. But yeah, that'll come later.
Yes,
I
yes.
just found out something great about this game. So it's being developed in cooperation with Acquire, and I knew them because of Way of the Samurai. But it says that Square Enix decided to work with Acquire because of their work on a game for the PSP called Holy Invasion of Privacy Badman. What did I do to deserve this? And I need to find this game and play it now. It's just the greatest name I've ever seen for a game.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's. I wondered actually how that happened because I don't think Acquire's worked with Square Enix before. Perhaps they have, but actually no, they probably did. They did Drakengard 3, I think.
Yeah, actually, I think they did.
Yeah, which was obviously Yoko Taro before Nier and Nier Automata, and yeah, so they've obviously got that relationship with Square Enix. But I wondered where this one came from because when you look at it originally, you think it's a natural extension of the Bravely Default development team, and it certainly plays like that as well. It feels like it feels very Bravely Default in the combat system and stuff. So I was wondering where Acquire came into the picture, but they've done a good job, I think. Without giving a review, have to be very careful. Have to be very careful about what I say because I obviously have been playing the game for review. I've got the full version on my Switch now, and I'm past the intro chapter that Jay mentioned. So the characters are starting to meld, and I'm really impressed. What about you, Harvard? Is this a game you're going to be picking up straight away?
I actually only played the first demo, and I kind of burnt out on it, to be honest. Like, I really respect the philosophy behind a game like this, because it reminds me of the old school SNES days of Square Enix when they're just making weird stuff like Bahamut Lagoon and Live Alive, which really reminds me of this game. And we're seeing that now with Tokyo RPG Factory stuff and with this game, with Bravely Default. I like that they're doing that. But at the same time, there's only so many JRPGs I can play in a year before I get burnt out, and I'm kind of at that stage right now.
Yeah, it's a genre that's made a real comeback, I think, in the last couple of years. Well, not that it ever went away like certain media outlets try to argue, but it's certainly...
They just floundered in the early days of the PlayStation 3. I mean, in the last couple of years of PlayStation 3, they were just back in full swing.
Yeah, and it was kind of tied to the fortune of the PS3. The PS3 itself wasn't selling very well. The Japanese developers didn't really have anywhere to put their games. So, there were a few that were dumped on handhelds and stuff. But in terms of the actual big console experience for the JRPG genre, there just wasn't the market for it because the console wasn't there for it. But as the PS3 started to take off and really sell well, and the Vita and the 3DS proved themselves as quality consoles in their own right as well, there was a resurgence, I guess, in development for those games. And we're seeing that continue on through now with the PS4 and Switch. But as a result, there are an awful lot of JRPGs to play, and they are big-time commitments. So you have my sympathies, Harvard, that you've kind of had enough of them for now. But it's a good time, I think, for Project Octopath Traveler to be released because this month only has the 2 major JRPGs. So hopefully a lot of
it's a very slow month for games in general. I did a game releases video which I do every month for the things coming out during the month, and July I had to fill out July with things like Captain Toad Treasure Tracker and stuff because it's really.
You're making it sound like that's thing.
That's a fill out.
It is a fill out though. I mean, we all played on Wii U, didn't we? Apart from everybody, because nobody owned a Wii U.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Nobody's played Toad yet. Nobody's played Toad.
Maps for what do you call that new Mario game? It has replacement.
Yeah, and it's got Odyssey maps.
Yeah.
And what about Go Vacation?
That's a bit more of a filler, but you can't diss Captain Toad. I'm sorry, Jay. That's not on this podcast.
It's filler for me though. I only play JRPGs.
Well, the good thing about Captain Toad is it's nice and short. You'd
Yeah,
be able to rush through it in a couple of hours. So
that's
you
what I mean.
can- you can-
It's just a very short month for games in general. I think people are going to be wanting to play something meaty this month, and it's probably going to be Octopath for most people.
Yes, that's probably fair. I think. I know you're going to pick up a trend. Not
Yes,
that you're
I
the
am.
world's biggest JRPG fan. I know you haven't, played too many of them, but this one's been. I know you've been talking about this one quite a lot.
Yes, yeah, definitely. This has been on my radar. I've got the limited edition pre-ordered, so I'm all ready to go with that one. So yeah, but I played both demos, and in the second demo, it definitely showed how the stories were great in the first, but they were more confined to the chapters, whereas the second demo sort of allowed you to basically the whole point of it was you would start your team, so you would go to the next point, start that first chapter. So you'll be able to explore the overworld a little bit more. So it sort of showed how it is a game rather than this is like the story. That's great, but what is it outside of the first initial chapter? So that's what I liked about the second demo. It sort of gave you a glimpse into what it could be as well. So, and also, you could basically have the freedom to go wherever you want. So you could listen to whatever, go and find whatever character you wanted, which was great. In the end, I think I went for the Hunter Primrose. I'm stuck on basically in the last hour. I was stuck on. I went for the basically the priest or whatever that is. Not the priest, but the other weird religious thing for whatever that thing is. I went to them, but I got stuck on one of the mission, the boss battle, and it was way too hard, so I gave up on it. So I don't know if I might replay the game from scratch when I actually get the full game, rather than taking off the save game file, which will be a feature where you can play what you've already played. But yeah, definitely excited for it.
Do you think that people might find it too difficult? Because one thing I have noticed about it is it's not easy. It's adopted. It's not quite as difficult as some of those old school JRPGs, but I think people who are less familiar with the genre might find it to be quite challenging.
Well, I found it easy up until the point I decided to go for my third character. So maybe the game, you've probably experienced this, yourself, but you can't really say much about. But maybe the other characters are less. Some are harder. Some are not like that initial final approach where they have the little boss battle in that last end of the chapter. Maybe for different characters, it's a little bit easier. Because obviously Primrose, was the second character I went, and I was able to finish that boss battle with ease. And having that second character was great. Occasionally I'd be able to have to heal my party, but I found it up until the point I went for my third character actually quite, challenging, but not really overwhelming.
Yeah, that's probably part of it. I think maybe the order in which you pick characters will have an effect, but
I imagined that's what they were going for, that sort of the artificial difficulty modes where instead of having to pick between easy, medium, and hard, it's depending on what character you go for, it'll sort of be more difficult or easier.
Yeah, and that's why there's no difficulty setting in the game. You can't actually choose how hard you want it to be, which is unusual for a modern JRPG, but I think that's probably it. If people want a challenge, they can pick odd characters or ones that are less than ideal. If you want an easier challenge, take it from me, when you play the game for the first time, go safe. go for the obviously safe character choices, because while you might appreciate or enjoy the story of some of the weirder characters a little bit more, you might find it a little bit hard. On that note, we'll go to some music from Octopath and come back and talk about the other big JRPG that's released this week, and making sure that none of us actually get any sleep, because we're trying to plow through a long time to get reviews done. And welcome back, everybody. Okay, so the other big JRPG releasing this week is Shining Resonance Refrain, which comes to us from Sega, and it was originally a PlayStation 3 game from a series that has not been localized in the West for quite a while. And for whatever reason, Sega's decided to localize a HD or PlayStation 4 remaster of that PlayStation 3 game. So...
And Switch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's coming out on PlayStation 4 and Switch. Sorry, you can
Oh,
also
so,
grab
and
it on
Xbox
Switch.
One and PC.
And Xbox One.
Ah, there you go. So Xbox
It's
One
everything.
owners actually have a JRPG to play. There you go.
Maybe I should buy it on the Xbox One and be the only sale.
Yeah, I don't know if the Xbox One is exactly the place where JRPG fans go, but anyway, it's there, which is good stuff. And yeah, it's an interesting release. I'm not entirely sure why Sega's decided to release it, other than it's a good game. I think by the time this podcast goes live, embargo's lifted. If not, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. But it's a good game. I really enjoyed it. I've given it a good review in the review that you can read on the digitally downloaded site, and it's an odd release. It's good, but it's weird.
Nowhere.
Yeah, it's weird that they decided to bring Shining Resonance back to the West. Or Shining.
Yeah, the Shining series. Yeah, because I've heard that it's like in the series, but it's like very loose. It's like not a real connection to the earlier Shining games that we did actually get, like Shining Force 1 and 2. I think we got.
Yes, we had a couple of Shining games, Shining Force 1 and 2. There was a couple on the GBA. Action RPGs, I think. There was also that dungeon crawler, Shining in the Darkness.
Oh, Shining in the Darkness. Oh, was that related to this? I didn't even know that.
Yes.
Well, they're in
they're
like the series, yeah, but they're not really related to each other. I think like Shining Force 1 and 2 obviously are. It's kind of like Final Fantasy, I guess.
Yeah, it's a bit like Final Fantasy in the sense that it all shares the same name without necessarily being related to one another. Or another example, I guess you could look at the Tales series, Bandai Namco's Tales series, because each of those games aren't really related to one another, but they share that same overarching brand. And the reason I mentioned Tales is, in terms of combat, this one actually feels a lot like a Tales game.
In terms of like everything, it feels like not everything. So presentation isn't Tales. But feel and gameplay and like structure, it's very Tales, and that's very good because I love Tales.
Yes. For me, it's probably a little bit of Tales with a dash of
Blue Reflection.
Gust. Yeah, no, not so much Blue Reflection, but more Arno Surge and Tonelico from Gust, which were older RPGs. And the reason I say that is Shining Resonance has this musical theme that runs through it, where weapons are musical instruments, and special abilities are tied into a person's musical ability and all that kind of stuff, which is a feature that was pretty prominent in the Arno Surge and Tonelico games from Gust. So that's where I get that association from.
And now that you say it, definitely feels like Tonelico Koga.
Yeah. So it's an odd game to reference because I don't think anybody played those games. But if you have played those games, you'll probably find some thematic similarities there with this one as well, with a combat system that's very reminiscent of Tales of whatever.
Tales of whatever, and Eternal Sonata even is a little bit Eternal Sonata.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that.
It just it's a little bit of like Power Rangers. I remember when they like summon a dragon with. She like blows into a weapon instrument and a dragon comes out, and I thought that is the Green Ranger summoning the dragon sword.
Yeah. That's probably true, actually.
And they even called it it's Draco Machina. So I was like, damn it.
But I guess the one point of difference this game has is whether it has a certain character artist called Tony Taka, who's basically contributed to the character designs of all the Shining series, and he's not so well known, I guess, in West, even amongst JRPG fans, because a lot of his games haven't been released out here. But he's an amazing artist who's especially well known, I guess, for a pin-up style or a fan servicey style. So when I came to play Shining Resonance, I was kind of expecting it to be quite fan servicey in nature, based on the artist that was involved. It's a bit like having Sunako involved in a game. You just assume that there's going to be a certain level of fan service involved, and this one doesn't have that. So I found that a bit odd, to be honest. It seems it's a very clean JRPG, actually.
Yeah, a big part is, well, not a big part, but there's lots of romance options and like romance events and that sort of thing, but it's definitely not fan servicey.
Yeah, those romance events are more character building.
Yeah, they're more like showing the relationship between the characters and how they're growing, rather than like anime titties.
Yeah. As Harvard was saying, as Harvard was saying off air, it's kind of a bit like Fire Emblem's relationship systems, I guess, in that there's not really any fan service involved. They just kind of talk and flirt a bit, and you can pat their head. If it's a Japanese version, you can pat their head, and then they get married for some reason.
Yeah.
But
and Jay, have a baby, remember?
Jay, you had such a pause before you said that. You just need to point that out. You had such a pause, and Ginny would really appreciate that.
It was for emphasis. No, I did double think. Like, can I say this? And I'm like, yeah, I can say this.
So yeah, I found that odd. With a version that you can get on Switch and PS4 and whatever, it actually has all the DLC from the Japanese version on PS3 built in, which
is
includes,
going to confuse everyone.
Yes. There's alternative stories that you can select from the start. Don't select the alternative story, select the base story. But you also get all the swimsuits and stuff that were released as DLC costumes, which I guess you can use to fan service it up a bit, because again, it's Tony Taka, and it feels a bit odd that there's not as much fan service in. But for people that like their JRPGs a bit cleaner, the good news is that you can enjoy this one without getting too weirded out by it.
But still appreciate some very, very well designed characters.
Yes, gorgeous characters. The game in general is quite beautiful, and I find it's a good example of what I've talked about a bit in the past, that realism in video games ages, but this anime style doesn't, with heavy use of cel shading graphics and all that kind of stuff. This game doesn't look like a PS3 game. It looks like any other kind of anime style PlayStation.
It looks like Tales of Berseria.
Yeah, it looks like Tales.
It just easily looks as good as Berseria, which is obviously PlayStation 4.
Yeah, or any of the games, like any of the Atelier games or any of those games. It looks exactly the same in terms of its standards as those, which is, again, like I said, proof that sometimes realism is not what you want to go for if you want a game that's a little bit more timeless, because this one, I don't think a lot of people will even know, who don't know the background of it, will even think it was a remake. And on that note, let's check in with Harford and Trent. I know that you two haven't been playing this yet. Jay and I obviously have a review, but is there anything about this game that you find interesting?
For me, that it's being developed by MediaVision, who have been so busy these last few years. They've done like the Digimon game, which was surprisingly great. They did Valkyria Revolution, Summon Night 6, and they've got a really big history with JRPGs as well. So I respect the company. Again, kind of burnt out, but I might pick it up. I think I might pick this over Octopath, to be honest, because it seems like a more fluid, like playable game.
You definitely don't need to think about it as much, I think, is the thing. It's kind of easy to sit back and just enjoy it, because it's a more action-based combat system. The whole game kind of flows much quicker. So I don't know exactly how long it is at this stage in terms of the DLC content. Some of that I haven't explored yet, but there seems to be a lot in it.
It's definitely not going to be as hard as Octopath.
But yeah, it's definitely not going to hit you as hard as Octopath. It's a lot more lighthearted in terms of the storytelling and stuff. That's for sure. Which means it's easier to play, I guess. To why you might want to pick it up over Octopath.
Yeah, I definitely get that.
And Trent, what about you? Is this something that you'll pick up after Octopath, or is it a little bit too JRPG for you?
Well, Possibly, possibly not. I don't know. Let's look at it this way. I was looking at the pre-order page, and if I pre-order it now, it comes with a metal sip case featuring some character artwork.
Yeah,
Actually.
that sounds really. Like I said, they do rely very heavily on the character art in these games because it is Tony Taka, and he's the real draw card, especially in Japan. Japanese anime fans would definitely know who he is, and would be paying attention to any game that he was involved with on that basis. All right. On that note, we might wrap things up for the podcast this week. Thank you very much for listening in. As always, you've got a lot of JRPGs to play, I guess. We'll be very keen to hear what you think about them, so be sure to drop us a line and tell us which ones you love and which ones you don't. And we'll see you at the next podcast. To finish things off, we've got some music from Shining Resonance just to put you in the mood for that game. And thanks everyone for joining, and we will be back next week.
何が目覚める